Hi everyone. I thought I would just start with a little quick video about how to solve an equation with both algebra and with a flowchart. This is for the solving simple equations, which is our very first lesson of Unit 4. So let's imagine that we have 4x minus 3 equals 13 that we're looking to solve. Our first step with algebra is going to be to look at what is happening to the variable and figure out how to do the opposite of those items. And as we do this, we keep thinking about bed mass, but we think about bed mass in reverse. So we've been referring to that in our course notes as being SAMDEB. And if you just take a little look at that, you can see that that's bed mass in reverse. So what we'll do is we'll begin with the equation 4x minus 3 equals 13. And we'll look to see what is it that's being done to the variable. Well, there's two things happening in this equation. The first thing is it's being multiplied by 4, and the second thing is that it's being subtracted by 3. So in a case like this, looking at bed mass backwards, we're going to need to do the adding and subtracting, which would be specifically the subtracting in this case. We're going to have to deal with that first. And then after we've dealt with that, we can deal with the multiplication of the multiplied by 4. So here's what that's going to look like. We're going to start with the 4x minus 3, but because we know it's being subtracted, we're going to do the opposite of that. So we're going to add 3. And if we add 3 to one side of an equation, we also have to add 3 to the other side of the equation, or else we would lose the balance. So at this point, what we can see is that we've actually created some zero pairs on this side, because subtract 3 plus 3 would become a 0, and that would just leave us with 4x. On the other side of the equal sign, we can complete the 13 plus 3 and get 16. So now at this point, we're looking to deal with getting rid of that multiply by 4. And we know that the opposite of multiplying will be to divide, so we'll divide both sides by 4. Some people get a little bit confused when solving equations at this point because they start to think, why all of a sudden are we turning it into a fraction? Well, what we're doing here is we're showing that we're dividing by 4, and we know that a fraction is the top number being divided by the denominator. So in this case, we're going to look for whatever the coefficient is of the variable, and we're going to divide by that number. When we do that on this side again, we're going to be canceling out, or 4 divided by 4 is going to give us 1, which will just leave us with x. And then on the other side of the equation, 16 divided by 4 will give us 4. So that's how we would solve a simple equation using algebra. On the other side of the chart, we're going to look at how we would use a flowchart to solve this. Now, this isn't really something that you have to be too concerned about picking up as a strategy, but it is just something that's useful to us a little bit later down the unit when we start to look at rearranging formulas. So let's take a look at it again, and we'll see how we're going to use the same equation, and we'll take a look at how this flowchart can be useful. So to deal with the flowchart, you're always going to start at the top, and you're going to create yourself a circle, and inside that circle, you're going to indicate what is the variable that we're solving for. So in this equation, we're looking to get x by itself. Now, when we're thinking about the flowchart on the left-hand side of the flowchart, we're actually looking at what's happening with bed mass properly, so the regular way that we look at bed mass. So if I look at the x inside the equation and I see what's happening to it, the first thing that would be happening to x is it would be multiplied by 4. And then I'll look again and see after the x has been multiplied by 4, then what's happening to it? Well, in this case, it's being subtracted by 3. So that will go in our next box. And the next two steps are kind of the easiest. We just look and we see after you do 4 times x, subtract 3, what's the result? Well, for that, you're just going to look at where your equal sign is and look at whatever is on the other side of the equal sign. So in this case, we're going to have a 13 at the bottom of our flowchart. And then we're going to take that 13 and we're going to carry it over to the other side of the flowchart. This will always be the case. Whatever the result was on the left-hand side, you're going to carry that over onto the right-hand side. And then you're going to look at each one of the boxes that you've created along the way up. And you're going to do the opposite of what was happening. So originally I had a subtract 3, and I know that that is going to turn into a positive 3. On the next level, I have a multiply by 4, and we know that that's going to change into a divide by 4. You might be starting to recognize these steps from what we did on the left-hand side when we did algebra. We're really doing the same process, we're just showing our steps a little bit differently. So this is where something really interesting happens. What we do now is we do BEDMAS backwards, but we start by looking at what we have at the bottom of our flowchart, and we simply follow the instructions as we go up. So if I do 13 plus 3, I'm going to get 16. And then I'm going to do 16 divided by 4. Well, that's going to give us 4. And that is the solution to the equation. We already knew that from our previous question, or our previous version of doing the question with algebra. So x is equal to 4. So that's how the flowchart works. I hope this is helpful to you. I'll see you again soon. Bye.